I'm eating an apple. It's a really bad time for you to start recording. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the second Our Sports Podcast. Last week we covered quarterbacks. This week we're going over the running backs. We really appreciate the feedback and the response we had from last week. We're going to want to keep it going. My name is Christian, and I'm joined with Matt. Matt, how's it going?
It's going good. I'm actually really excited that we have gotten to a second episode. I wasn't quite sure if we were going to get a second episode, but I'm having fun with it. I'm assuming you're having fun with it, and all three of our listeners are having fun with it.
Yeah,
So
it's
we're good to
great.
go.
Yeah, we've actually had a lot of good feedback. We had a little bit of discussion in the comments section. So if you have anything you want to add, you want to talk about in our conversation, make sure to talk about it down below in the comments section. Make sure you leave a like and make sure you subscribe to the podcast. It's real quick. It's real easy. Just look down, click subscribe. It helps us out a ton. And we'll get rolling on this thing as soon as we start getting a little bit more feedback from the community, a little bit more response. Matt, running backs, go.
All right, so I'm going to start at the back of my list. I'm doing a little differently. We're going to go 32 through 26 to start it off. So the first running back on the list, and this is more situations. We're doing it by team. So it goes by team, the actual running back. So, like, for example, at the Seahawks, I have Rashad Penny. Now you're asking, why is Chris Carson not there? Chris Carson isn't there because he is an unrestricted free agent and has yet to sign with the team. This is done as of Wednesday.
Wednesday, the 17th at 6:08 p.m. The most recent free agent signing was Hassan Reddick to the Panthers, linebacker from the Cardinals.
Well, that's unfortunate. I kind of wanted the Ravens to get another pass rusher, but here we are.
Nope.
So, with all that being said, we're going to start with the Seahawks at Rashad Penny. He's their lead back. No, this isn't good. This is definitely easily the worst situation. He had 11 attempts last year for 34 yards. I don't know if I looked at like the other backs. I didn't really look too much into it. He was listed as their starting running back for the beginning of the season. He is a first round pick, I believe, in 2018, maybe even 2017. I think it was 2018 for sure, actually. Yeah, 11 attempts for 34 yards, 3.1 yards per carry. It's looking rough. I'm assuming that he was either injured. It says he's active, so
He did have injuries, yeah.
yeah. So I think over the years he's had injury concerns. He should be healthy at the start of next season. We'll see what he can do, but definitely not a great showing. And I would say definitely the worst situation. Next, Falcons. They had Todd Gurley. Todd Gurley is an unrestricted free agent. Last I saw, he had ties to the Lions. That may have changed. I know that they had another free agent signing. I'm not exactly sure, but
They recently signed Jamal Williams, formerly of the Packers, to a multi-year deal, I believe. So now they have DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams on the roster.
gotcha. So the Falcons, Ito Smith is their lead back. He's actually not as bad as I thought he would be when I initially found out that Todd Gurley was not there anymore. 268 yards, 1 touchdown, 4.3 yards per carry at 63 attempts. Nothing too special. They weren't a great team, but when he got carries, he didn't do too bad. A lot of the time, it was just 1 to 2 carries per game, and then towards the end of the season, he actually started getting a little bit more carries, and he was averaging a decent yardage per carry. So definitely can see maybe him moving up this list. So if we ever do this again, I think that could be a really good situation. So next we have Coperine of the Jets. He was behind Frank Gore. Frank Gore, unrestricted free agent. He had 262 yards, 2 touchdowns. Not something that's really gonna blow you away, but just your yeah, I don't know. It's the Jets. What are you gonna do? Hopefully, they get another running back either in the draft that can actually help bolster that roster and help. Hopefully, Justin Fields get there. If not, they keep Darnold. That's a different situation. Next up, I definitely underrated this player at 29. I have David Johnson. Now, he had 691 yards. He actually had a decent season. I am putting him here because of what he was traded for at the beginning of the season. I think it's stupid. I think it's angering. And so he doesn't deserve to go any higher than this. They signed Mark Ingram as well for this season, former Raven, a loved Raven. But yeah, he's here. He really deserves to be higher, but I'm just mad at that entire situation. He's probably like a more of a 20 running back in the 20s. Probably not as low, or in the high 20s, not 29. But my salt prevails.
Big
So,
Truz. Woo woo.
Big trust.
Lamar Jackson in the flesh.
In the flesh, baby. Next, we have Myles Gaskin. So he is all the way back on the list. I feel like he could be a little higher. I feel like I'd say that for a lot of these players. They could be a little bit higher. But for Myles Gaskin, he's again a pretty good runner. 4.1 yards per carry. You know, like decent, like not like great numbers, but not terrible. He just from my knowledge, I believe he had injury concerns, and for that reason, I kind of like knocked him a little bit. And so, I especially like when it comes to the Dolphins, I feel like this is where he belongs. Next at 27, I have James Conner of the Pittsburgh Steelers, one of the worst running games in the NFL. You really wonder. He also is one with like major injury concerns, but I don't know how they did so bad with a runner like this. He's a really good running back. He just didn't produce this year and gets hurt a lot. So I just feel like this is more of a this is more of a comment on the Steelers' run game as a whole than James Conner. They're just not getting it done with their current line. If they fix it up, I could see him, shooting up the rankings. But for right now, this is where he is. And last and not least is Deandre Swift. Didn't like him coming out of college. I thought that he was overrated. I didn't really understand it. He had a few good games. It seems like at the beginning of the season they were going really slow with him. But when you get beat out for a 36, 37-year-old Adrian Peterson, and even after Peterson retires, they're still looking for like free agents to come in and help you be and help you be a productive back in that sort of way. I don't know. I don't really trust him. I think he could be good. I mean, a lot of his games he averaged a lot of yards per carry, but a lot of them he was kind of suffering in that regard. But again, I think he has a lot of promise. But right now, this is about where I'd rank him. So, Christian, questions, comment, concerns on this part of the list?
Yeah, I'd like to point out that I'm fairly certain, and I've just looked it up, that is true. Adrian Peterson has not yet decided to leave the game of football, so he can he's still running amok around the league right now. As far as your ordering goes, I think running backs are very easy to interpret. Unlike quarterbacks, you can blame the weapons, you can blame the scheme. Running backs, pound for pound, are all relatively equal athletes, in my opinion. With some obviously have better skill sets than others. But with this particular list, I think it's very easy to notice which ones are worse than others. There's one higher up on the list that I disagree with, that we'll get into later, that I think are worse than some that are down here. But in general, it's fairly straightforward when speaking with running backs. Production speaks highly. You can have an incredibly productive quarterback that you don't think is that good, a la Josh Allen, or the other way around with someone I can't think of with a reference at the moment. But I really have no complaints or concerns. I enjoy that David Johnson is that low, due to the fact that he was part of one of the worst trade deals of all time. We're in the worst trade deals of all time in America. Okay. Um, but overall, I think that's all pretty straightforward. I'll be able to comment a little more here in the future, but I will pass it on back to you.
All right, so I guess we'll roll with 25 through 21. So we're only going to do 5 this time. That was 7. So kick it off with Devin Singletary. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm really disappointed that he didn't have that great of a season. 687 yards at 4.4 yards per carry. Not the best. It could have been that he was splitting with Zach Moss. I'm not exactly sure, but because he had great production his rookie season, but for some reason this season he suffered a little bit, and he is listed as the number 1 running back on their roster. So, with that being said, it's not something that's going to blow you away. I think he's a solid starter, but he's nothing special. So, 25 is where he lands. The Cardinals have yet to sign back. Who was their original starter? I can't think of his name off the top of my head.
Kenyon Drake.
Kenyon Drake, yes. Kenyon Drake was the original starter. He's an unrestricted free agent. He has it signed back with the Dolphins, or with the Cardinals, to my knowledge. But I was looking at Chase Edmonds, and honestly, especially when you have a running quarterback, right, and they have to keep their eyes on Kyler Murray, and then they have that great receiving core. Even if they don't have the best line, it really allows running backs in that system to excel. So you're saying earlier you don't think the system matters. In this case, I think it does. The running backs that tend to be with like Lamar Jackson and Kyler Murray and Cam Newton, they tend to have greater success because the quarterback is also a running threat. So the middle linebackers and the edge defenders are also worried about the quarterback and what he's doing. And sometimes the running back can get lost in that way. So Chase Edmonds, only 97 attempts and 448 yards at 4.6 yards per carry. So he did pretty well for a backup. If you have a backup and they're giving you 500 yards, that's better than some of the starters on this list. So I have no issues with him. I hope that he crawls to the list, but I think he's in a really good situation to succeed if Kenyon Drake doesn't return. At 23, I have the 49ers. I don't have a specific running back. I have their starter is Jeffrey Wilson and Raheem Mostert, but they're going to get hurt because all the 49ers get hurt.
Fact.
And you just wonder, like, it just works in Shanahan's system, right? So, and then they just signed 2 great line people, which is, in my last episode, I said this. I said Lions a sneaky need, and they just invested like 28 million actually a year into their line. So, that's pretty cool. I just think any running back in that system is going to succeed. So I put them here. I think that they're going to do better than any of the running backs below them. And so, talent-wise, I don't really know. I know Raheem Mostert's pretty fast and pretty and a pretty good running back overall. I don't really know much about Jeffrey Wilson. I know that he has an injury history, and he came back for one important game and scored, and then he got hurt. So it kind of is what it is when you're a 49er. You just like getting hurt for some reason. 22, I have Sony Michel and Damien Harris. It's mostly for Damien Harris. Sony Michel is also listed as a starting running back. He didn't have a great season. You also have to remember that they had Cam in there, and Cam would typically run the football. And instead of running plays like read options, he typically keep, and on pass plays he typically keep. And so, with all that being said, it did open up a lot for like Sony Michel and Damien Harris. Damien Harris apparently was the second highest graded running back according to PFF. I don't really know how much weight that holds because of PFF, but at the same time, I think it shows that he's definitely doing the right things when he's in there. I feel like they belong here, but not because of the type of runners they are, except with the exception of Damian Harris, but because of the system that they're in. And I think that their system sets them up well to succeed. And at 21, we have Austin Eckler. When I originally made this list, I had Austin Eckler all the way up at 13, I believe. His name carries weight. He got paid. I think he shooed Melvin Gordon out of town. He took that spot. So I was like, oh, he must be pretty good. But I think that his reputation precedes him. So, with that being said, he only had 530 yards, but he's mostly a pass catching running back. And I've had conversations with people like, is pass catching good? Is pass catching bad? Like, how does it weigh in terms of like when you're arguing with like, oh, he's the runner, you know? And I think it does hold a certain amount of value, right? I'm not going to discredit his receiving yards. He had 403 of them, which is better than some of the Ravens wide receivers, but at the same time, I think he could have done a little bit better. And I know that there's other runners on the Chargers rosters that are like I can't remember the exact name, and if you can figure it out real quick, I'd appreciate that. But they had another running back on the roster who was also doing a pretty decent job this season, so that could have cut into his stats. But either way, he's not even close to like a Christian McCaffrey or an Alvin Kamara. So I think that this is about the right spot for him. So to you, Christian, if you found that information, I'd appreciate it.
It's like Jack Johnson or something. Hold on, I'm looking. Joshua Kelly and Justin Jackson are the 2 other running backs that had rotations.
I believe I was thinking of Joshua Kelly.
Yeah, Joshua Kelly is the one from UCLA. He's a good runner. Justin Jackson, I think, is a similar mold to Eckler. I think Eckler was hurt for a good bit of last year as well.
Was he?
I believe, because the other 2 worked in a good rotation for a large portion.
He did only have 11 games, so maybe I am underrating him here. I didn't realize that he got hurt. I must have missed that. But
yeah, that was the one I was referring to earlier. I believe Austin Eckler is definitely in the top half of running backs in the league, especially when you're considering that around that area you have some running backs I completely don't think are talented in in general, sitting around that 14 to 18 mark that you have on this list. I think he's very well talented. He fits that system very well. They're going to only be better now with Justin Herbert getting acclimated into the system. To comment on other things, I think Damian Harris, being the second-ranked PFF running back, I believe you said, is apt to when he played. I remember at one point he was averaging 7 yards a carry on a Patriots offense, in which I could argue with no motivation that they had at that point when he started playing, that it was all merited yards and it wasn't handed to him through scheme and whatnot. Uh, the 49ers are strangely enough becoming the Philadelphia Eagles of old, where the Eagles decided to make it to the Super Bowl and then become incredibly injured and not be able to figure out their quarterback situation. That is just merely what's currently happening to the 49ers, which is a very interesting take on, not take, a very interesting thing that's happening in the league right now. I think the Cardinals, Kenyon Drake should return. I will believe that. But if we're going off Chase Edmonds, he's one of the better number twos on the team. Um, I'm not sure how well they work in tandem with one another. I haven't seen their play quite enough. I believe they're very similar in role. So it's more of giving each other a break rather than being able to give a spark to an offense. But in general, I do believe Devin Singletary is one of the lower running backs in the league. I was never inspired watching him play. And I believe that if he was in such a situation this year and being such a prolific offense, and he didn't take his chance to shine and was actually starting to be beat out by someone late on in the season. So it's very interesting. Again, I would put Austin Eckler higher up on this list and move some others down, but for pretty much everything else, you hit the nail right in the head.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. Looking back, I forgot that I didn't realize that he was injured. I guess if I would have taken that into account, he'd probably be a bit higher. But I'm gonna keep it how it is. I said what I said,
Yeah, you're the
and
one
as
who's
for
supposed to do the work for this podcast. I'm the one who's supposed to show up and be underprepared and have to think on their feet. Come
all
on
right, well,
now.
I'm deleting all of this. But
Hey,
I think that that you also hit the nail on the head with Devin Singletary. I really liked him, but you're right. I mean, he was in a pass first offense, and he had all the opportunities to get a lot of good open lanes when people are playing deep and off ball and doubling Stephon Diggs and stuff like that. So, without further ado, let's move on to what is that? 20 through 16.
20.
So, 20. I'm kind of Antonio Gibson, I feel like he when I was making this list, I feel like he should be higher. And every single time I tried to put him higher, I was like, I don't I don't know if he can go higher than these other people. I really wanted to put him there, but he had about 800 yards, 11 touchdowns. Really, really did well for the most part. Was a starter throughout the season. He actually beat out beginning of the season. He beat out Adrian Peterson. Got Adrian Peterson kicked out of town, and overall had a pretty good season with a pretty less than stellar offense. So, with that being said, good on him. I think that he could be a good, solid back in this league, and uh, I just feel like he belongs around number 20. And at number 19, we have Cam Akers, who is part of Sean McVay's offense. Didn't really start the season, but towards the end of the season, he really became the bell cow back, cowbell back.
Bell cow.
But towards the end of the season, he really became the lead back and performed fairly well. So it's not like he had any like prolific performances. He did really well against New England. I guess that'd be one, but nothing that really like made your eyes pop to really push him up further on the list. But from what I understand about him, he has a lot of promise and has next season to become a really prolific back. So Melvin Gordon, I actually had him ranked lower, and then I went and looked at it, and I have a Melvin Gordon bias. Whenever I watch him run, I'm very uninspired. I just think he's not that great of a back, but he does have production, so it's hard not to look past that. So with that being said, I mean he's your solid starter. I think that's what he is. I don't think he's anything special, but if you're looking for someone who's gonna hit some home runs and someone who's gonna break some tackles and someone who's gonna run a little bit, I feel like he's just kind of your average starting running back that you would make in Madden. Next, we have my least favorite player in the 2020 draft, Clyde Edwards-Helaire. He had 803 yards and 300 yards receiving, and 4 touchdowns. So not really the type of person to punch it in. I think that they were using their backup running back to really punch it in the end zone a lot of the time, or just Patrick Mahomes' arm mostly. But yeah, I felt like he wasn't really a bulldozer runner, and he wasn't really like a quick runner. He was really shifty on his feet. He had really good footwork, but I felt like overall he wasn't that great of a back to be put in the top half of the league. I think he had a good season, and he's a solid starter. And hopefully he keeps this up, to my dismay, and he improves onto the next season. But we'll see what happens. And next, surprisingly low, is Ezekiel Elliott. I wanted to put him higher. I thought that he could be higher. I just think that he had such a bad season. It's kind of hard to put him any higher. And a lot of that is probably because of Dak Prescott getting hurt. Ben DiNucci, leading the offense. It's really hard to get those gaps open and really make a big difference in the run game. So hopefully he jumps back up next year. But it was kind of hard for me to put him any higher when his production dropped so heavy. And there's some backs up here that didn't even have the advantages of even having a picture of an offense, any offense besides him. So for actually a lot of the running backs up here, that's what really makes a lot of the running backs special. They either make the passing game good or they succeed despite a terrible passing offense. But yeah, so that's my list up to this point. And why don't you take it away, Christian?
Ben DiNucci had the opportunity to put James Madison University on the biggest stage in football outside of the Super Bowl in a Monday night game on the Dallas Cowboys field. And you would think coming in, oh, he's the CAA Offensive Player of the Year. Oh, he's been to multiple in national championships with JMU. He should at least look like a functioning quarterback that is able to throw the ball, right? No! Ben DiNucci has soiled the face of James Madison, spit on Jimmy M's shoes, and rubbed them into the dirt. He has soiled the reputation of this organization and university in the football perspective, in my opinion, and I'm not sure when it will be fixed.
All right, so what do you think about the running backs?
What running backs? I only know Ben DiNucci. So I think and Antonio Gibson, I really like him. When he was coming out of Memphis, being a dual threat in the wide receiver and running back slot, I really wanted my team to draft him because it would fit a very good role. I think that if the Washington football team was a better organization, he'd be higher up on this list. I think this is reasonable for him right now, especially with the amount of time that Dwayne Haskins was throwing to him and Alex Smith was trying to not die while walking. So I think that's relatively reasonable. I think Cam Akers is the same exact player as Devin Singletary, and I don't know how to differentiate them. Please enlighten me. Melvin Gordon, I'm not sure where I am on Melvin Gordon. He's a very interesting case. He's he has proven to be one of the most electric players in the game, but at the same time, I think that the comparison between him and Philip Lindsay being on that roster is not relatively that much of a difference. So I think the Broncos in general have a good running back situation with their depth that they have at that position, but I don't think their quarterback is doing them any favors in terms of their production. Clyde, I like Clyde. I like his story. I think you don't like him because he's short and he's on the Chiefs. But I do think he was overhyped the second he got drafted to the Chiefs. I think he's a great fit for them. But I do think that the media kind of ran crazy with Clyde going to be like a huge asset for them when he was a rookie running back. And they more often than not don't have that great of an impact on the overall team. Zeke at 16 is almost high treason. I understand why he's here, but we know who he is, and he's easily a top 10 running back in this league. It's just so crazy to me, the amount of production we had from Zeke this year, to drop him down all the way to 16 and look at the rest above him and be relatively okay with what's above there. I think based on what we know Zeke to be and what I expect from him in the future, I would bump him up to the top 10 again, but it's hard to fight you from that. So we're going to move on from our top 16 now and move into number 15, where you have the Super Bowl winning running back Ronald Jones of the Buccaneers.
Well, you kind of stole my. I wanted to respond to some stuff there. Like I agree with the part I didn't like about him is probably that he was overhyped, but also like compared to the other running backs on the board. And Clyde. I think compared to the other running backs on the board, he just didn't compare to them in any way, shape, or form. And not to mention that he had Burrow and those two great wide receivers, and I just felt like he was in a good situation. He moved to an even better situation somehow. I don't know how you go from the 2019 LSU to the 2020 Chiefs, and somehow you found a better situation for yourself. But that's besides the point. So yeah, you're right. I have Ronald Jones. I was gonna put them lower, when I have my rankings. I'm like, what I prefer, this person or this person. Yeah, I had him lower than this, and I went and looked at like some stats and kind of like how he did overall, and he had like a lull in the middle of the season where he wasn't getting as many touches, but he was a really strong running back. Had a lot of dominating performances against good defenses, against bad defenses. So it was kind of like all over the place. It wasn't like a single player dominating specific defenses. So right there, I think this is about where he belongs. He has the ability to be better, but right here is good for me right now. And next up, I have the partial reason for this podcast, but David Montgomery at 14 with 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 4.3 yards per carry. He was a really solid running back, and he really turned it on towards the end of the season. From my understanding about when he actually became a better running back was after they switched the play calling from Nagy to laser. So as soon as they changed that, he actually started to improve his running. And a lot of the games that he ran well in, they won and they put up a decent amount of points. So, but when he ran poorly towards the end of the season, they tended to lose. But towards the end of the season, he was getting like 20, 22 plus, like real starting numbers. And he was performing. I mean, 4.6, 4.1, and then a 3.1 in the loss to the Packers in yards per carry. So it's not like he was a terrible running back. He proved that as soon as he started getting starting carries. So with that being said, I think he lands at 14 on the list behind these next. This is one where I'm a Ravens fan. I'm a little bit biased here, but knowing I know that this is when you play the Titans, but you get Edwards is in and when Dobbins is in. It's a clear difference on how our offense ran the yards in that game. So if he was getting again a lull in the middle of his season, like I've said for other running backs, but as soon as they started giving the ball and giving him 20 carries, he was really getting it done with really good. I mean, with really good numbers against some good defenses. So I think this is where he belongs. He projects really well. I think that he's going to improve. I remember wondering why he's one of my favorite running backs coming out in the draft. I was wondering why he wasn't doing so well at the beginning of the season. And what I've noticed from watching his film is he always picks the right hole. He just lacks lateral quickness for some reason, which isn't really. I looked at his scouting reports or scouting comments on him, and no one really talked about that. So I don't really know if I'm just stupid or I don't really know what's going on, which is probably the case. But I just noticed if he jump cut behind the line, he couldn't come out of it and hit the hole really hard. So, but he always picked the right hole. So I think this is where he belongs based on what I know. He's definitely not a top 10 quarterback, but he's definitely a franchise guy that they can build off of. So I put him here, and it's a little bit of a projection. And last but not least, we have Miles Sanders. He had a fairly good season. I believe he was hurt a couple games, but overall he put up really solid performances against some good defenses, notably New Orleans and Baltimore. And he also was efficient in the backfield, out of the backfield catching the ball. And I know once Jalen Hurts got in, he was really the focal piece of their offense. So overall, I think that he did a fairly good job, and I think he's not a top 10 running back, but he does show promise to be there in the future if he continues doing what he's doing. So with that, I put it over to you. Let's hear all your comments about David Montgomery, you little hater.
I am not a David Montgomery hater, okay? I am a David Montgomery hater. I don't Mostly due to the fact that one of our friends and potential colleagues here in the future, Mike, is a Bears fan, and for some reason he likes to completely inflate the value that the players on the Bears have. This is not me saying David Montgomery is a bad running back, but the perspective I have on him is completely dragged down by the opinion of one of my friends. I don't think David Montgomery is a top 5 running back. I don't think he's a top 16 running back. Kidding, he's around 14. I think he's completely accurate on the list. But he doesn't offer much for me. I feel that with running backs you can get a lot of they're the reason they don't get contracts that are very large and long like wide receivers is because they're easy to break down and they're very replaceable. I think in 2 years, David Montgomery will be a backup on a team somewhere and will not be on the Bears as the front man anymore. And I think he's there primarily currently because he's on a rookie contract and he's better than Tariq Cohen. That's the only reason I think I see him being in this situation that he is right now. Ronald Jones was abysmal last year for some reason, not sure why, and then he came into his own this year with Tom Brady and everything. I do think that the change of the system overall helped him benefit. Um, but again, he was I did not like anything I saw from Ronald Jones before, and he's turned out to be one of the better running backs in the league now. When we move on to the rookie sensations you have here, lining the rest of the crop here in J.K. Dobbins, Jonathan Taylor, and Miles Sanders. I think it's a little premature, especially for Miles Sanders, in my opinion, to put them high on this list. I like him the least of the group. I think Jonathan Taylor will be very successful in the league, and I think J.K. Dobbins has the potential to be the best running back out of the class. I hate the Ravens more than myself, and I was pounding on the table for the Ravens to start playing J.K. Dobbins because I saw the talent and the potential he has. And once they started doing that, they started winning more games. They win a playoff game. They move forward. Unfortunately, that led to the end of Mark Ingram and the woo woo era. But that's that's what comes of it. But I think Miles Sanders is definitely overrated on your list here. I see his talent, but I don't believe that he will be higher than Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins, Ronald Jones, Zeke, Clyde in the future.
Yeah, no, I think I can respect a lot of those opinions. I think with the Miles Sanders thing, you have to remember his offense was, very poor. He was his offense for a lot of the games that he was in. He was the one that was producing the yardage. He was the one that was keeping his team in the game. Well, I mean, it's the Eagles, so they weren't really in a lot of games. But with that being said, I mean, until Jalen Hurts came in, I think Carson Wentz is just. I'm glad he's in a different situation right now, in a better place.
I'm so glad he's on the
Um,
Colts.
oh no, but overall, yeah, I think Taylor has a lot of upside. I think if he keeps up his production that he had at the end of the season, and again, that was against like the Jags and the Texans and the the Raiders, but he also did some damage against teams like Green Bay and Pittsburgh. Um, but like once he found a little bit more of his own, he was doing a lot better. So that's why I have those two there. I think that's about where they belong. Maybe a little bit overrated, but I mean, the season will tell. And I think you're right on Zeke. Now that I look at it, it was just hard for me to. I just feel like he's been on the decline. It's not like a one season thing. Like he's been on the decline since he had his first and second season, since they paid him basically. So that's why I didn't rank him so high. I think he's where I want him to be. So with that being said, I'll move on to the next part of the list, which is the top 10. So, number 10, Josh Jacobs. I had him lower. I actually had him in the teens when I initially did it. And then, I went and researched his production, and I was like, this player's a lot better than what I remember. He had the whole fantasy thing where he said he was sitting out a game and he actually didn't. People were real mad about that, but he was really productive. 12 touchdowns, tied for the fourth most. Not really good yards per carry, but I mean he's the back you just hand it to and he will pound it. He will pound it over and over and over again. And I mean he ended up with 1,000 yards with a massive amount of attempts, but uh, I just think he's a really talented player. He's asked a lot of, especially on that team. So, and overall, he does a really good job for being such a young player. I mean, he is only 23. Also, all right, wait. He's only 23. Next up, we have Aaron Jones, the Packers. So I stared at him for a while trying to decide where he belongs in this list. Because you hear about him and you're like, I mean, he's not that great of a runner. He's like he's like the lesser part of the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams, and the Aaron Jones trio. Like he's on the lower end of them. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, I mean, those are two of the best players in the NFL at their position. So I think I had a little bit of bias looking at him during this, but once I really, took a second look at his numbers, he just had a really good season. I mean, 5.5 yards per carry. I mean, I hope so when you have Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams on the outside, but he overall had a good season against some good defenses. He ran all over the Panthers. Not a great defense, I know, but a good one. Not top, not the worst. Ran all over the Eagles. Ran all over the Bears. So overall, a pretty solid, running back. I'm not gonna say he's the best ever, but pretty solid overall, and I think that he deserves to be in the top 10. Next up, I have Dalvin Cook. I feel. Whoa, I skipped one. Next up, I do not have Dalvin Cook. I have James Robinson, and this was the player I was referring to earlier, where the player put his entire team on his back and carried it. Undrafted free agent during COVID, just got hurt and still had 1,000 yards as a rookie running back. Should have been in the conversation for awesome offensive player or offensive rookie of the year if he didn't get hurt. I mean, he had a phenomenal season, and to think that he wasn't drafted is absolutely wild to me. And on that terrible team with, I mean, I love Minshew, but he's not going to be driving the offense. And they put Glennon in for a little bit. It was just a rough look down there in Jacksonville. And he had just so much production against so many good teams, against everyone. He just had production. I think. Yeah, I mean, he had some like off games, but for the most part, he was just a solid running back all the way around. Rookie, I project him very high in the future. I mean, just blown away by him. I think getting Trevor Lawrence and all the free agents they've added will only help him succeed even further because less of the focus will be on him. And now next up, I have Joe Mixon, who didn't have a great start to his season and then got hurt. So
don't get me started.
Joe Mixon is a really good player. I've watched him for several years, and I hated every single time he touched the football. He's such a good player. I don't think he's a top 5 guy, but he's definitely in this. He's the best of the not best running back, in my opinion. He's a very talented player. He's a very good player, and I think if you really take the time to like go back and like watch and see what he's done, it's impressive. He's a really really good running back, and I believe that's. Oh, in number 6, I have Saquon Barkley, who is probably should be the best running back. He should be the best running back. He just is, perpetually hurt. I just think that he pushes his body too much to the limit. So hopefully, he had two games this season. One against the Steelers, one against the Bears. Against the Steelers, I just remember watching that game. And you're like, what do you want him to do? He was just getting tackled in the backfield every single down. And they just kept on handing him the ball and just being like, good luck. That line was so terrible. And then he tore his ACL or MCL against the Bears, and that was the end of the season. And I think if he comes back healthy and good, he's really gonna be special again. I mean, he's always special. Every time he touches the ball, he's special. So hopefully it stays that way, and hopefully the Giants get him back for the full season. So there is my first half of my top 10 thoughts.
Yeah, I really like it. I really like Josh Jacobs. I've always been a big Josh Jacobs guy. His story is incredible. And I love the way that he runs the ball, especially in a situation where they're in a run heavy offense. They do a lot of the heavy lifting. I like what he has to offer. I think Aaron Jones was overpaid a large amount here recently, which was very interesting that he currently makes around $0.5 million more a year than Derrick Henry does on their new contract. completely out of pocket, in my opinion. James Robinson is great and had an incredible season and was the reason I placed the way I did in my fantasy football league. However, I don't think he doesn't merit a top 10 selection yet. I think Zeke reasonably should be up here and James Robinson should be slotted down a little bit more. And I think Josh Jacobs would be better, in my opinion. I do think being on the Jaguars and having nothing to look forward to other than James Robinson on the offense, he did well when the box was stacked against him. But I just don't think that currently in your rookie season you can be propelled to this spot when, especially, he didn't even win Offensive Rookie of the Year. So moving on to Joe Mixon, who I recently mentioned fantasy, was the thorn in my side. He was meant to be so good coming in with Joe Burrow. They would finally get the offense moving. And then he just kept getting hurt. There was a 2-week injury that lasted him around 9 weeks. And he completely derailed my entire plan. It was going to be so good. I was going to win all the money. And then next thing you know, I'm only getting second. Did I come second? I think it. I'm very tired. And then we come on to Saquon Barkley, who, that poor son of a bitch. I swear, if I were the Giants running back, if I were him, I would take the next few years off until my contract expired and try to go somewhere else. Can you imagine Saquon Barkley on the Colts offensive line? Dear God in heaven, that would be like when Brett Favre was throwing to Randy Moss. It just slinging it, and then Randy's catching it over people's heads, and you can't do anything about it. It would never end. I feel bad for him being on the Giants, but he's by far, I think, the most talented individual on this list. He has one of the greatest abilities to take over a game, but he just won't stop hurdling people, so he keeps getting hurt. So now, back to you. See if any comments you have on what I said, or move on to the list.
So yeah, I think you have a point with James Robinson, but I completely disregard it. I think that this isn't a quarterback ranking. This is a running back ranking. I think that he's going to get better. I can't see him getting any worse. And as for this whole Zeke push, maybe a little higher. You have to remember, Zeke's been regressing every season. He's doing worse. So they paid him, and he's just been doing worse since then. So I have a hard time, putting him up here with these ascending players. But yeah.
No, that's a fair argument. I have to allow you.
So for this next part of my list, I'm going to go top 5 one by one. I'm going to start at 5, end at 1. So number 5, Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook deserves to be here. He's not on the level of these other 4 in terms of their just straight up playmaking, but he is one of the most elite backs in the league. So I feel like it's what I've said doesn't really make sense, but like I don't put him in this like upper group, but like what he does is just so good, and I just don't know how to describe it any other way than that. He's a great runner. He carries the fight when he's on the field versus when Madison's on the field. It's just completely different. I remember he went out during, I believe it was the Seahawks Monday night game, and like after he got hurt, the game completely changed. The Vikings were in complete control, and then he goes out, and the Seahawks come back, and I believe he actually went back out at the end of that game, and then the score got a little closer. He's just an unbelievable player, and he is the fuel for that Vikings offense. I think part of the problem with him is that he gets hurt so often. It's hard to put him up here with these other guys because we never see a complete season from him. It's always, a really good season, then he gets hurt, and then you're like, well, I mean, like what he could be, like what could he have been? So I think he belongs right about here, and I just want to hear your thoughts.
On Dalvin Cook, I really like Dalvin. I don't have a lot to say about him. I have to be completely honest. He's a good running back on a decently good team, and they run the ball a lot. I'm very strangely have almost nothing to say on Dalvin Cook. He had fun competing in the race for a little bit for the leading rushing yards in the year, and fell off towards the end. But I have to apologize. I don't know why, but I genuinely have nothing to say about it.
Hey, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'll just move on to number 4, which is Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, he was hurt this season. I think he played in a few games, to my knowledge, but overall he just didn't play. But he is a really dynamic player. I kind of wish I would have seen him in that offense. I know his backup did really well, but hopefully that hopefully he gets the chance to play with a whole cast and a whole crew. Maybe he might get traded. Honestly, he's a good package deal if they're trying to get Deshaun Watson. He's a good player to throw in. I hope they don't, because he's just an elite player and he deserves to be this high on the list. And I don't really have much else to say about him. Great pass catcher, great runner, good player.
Yeah, Christian McCaffrey's great. It's tough when you're in this upper echelon of running backs to have things that differentiate each other. But I think what McCaffrey offers is his ability to be the most reliable individual on the field, regardless of the situation. Some of the people above him on the list are a lot more one-dimensional than he is. Uh, Christian McCaffrey is the ultimate weapon for backfield. He can fit in on any team, any situation, any quarterback, respectively, and be successful. So I think that's something we have to admire about him. Him getting 1,000 receiving and 1,000 rushing yards in a season is incredible, and I think it's relatively forgotten about because he got hurt, and he's on a poverty franchise of the Panthers that, albeit, could be coming up on the rise. I really like the new coach and what they have going on. They need a drastic overhaul, which hopefully they will be undertaking. But yeah, he's an incredible runner. Love Christian McCaffrey. Also, great name. Go White Boy.
All right. Well, I would agree with you that the ultimate weapon, except that Alvin Kamara is right there. I think Alvin Kamara is better than Christian McCaffrey. I think that he's a stronger running back. I think that they're similar speed wise and they're similar catching. And I know like Alvin Kamara hasn't put up the exact stats that Christian McCaffrey has, but the way that when Alvin Kamara is playing and Taysom Hill isn't in, he's just a phenomenal running back and a phenomenal. He's out there like a wide receiver. It's crazy how talented Alvin Kamara is. And if they like play him consistently and didn't love Taysom Hill so much, I think that he would do very well. Hopefully, for Alvin Kamara's sake, Jameis Winston is the starter next season for the Saints, but we'll see. We'll see how that pans out. But I think Alvin Kamara again would be great on. Actually, most of these running backs that we're listing would be great on, and the top 10 would be great on any team. So, I think just like Christian McCaffrey, he brings the element of pass catching. He's such a smooth runner. He's so quick. Has so good at reading the field, and just overall a really talented player.
Yeah, fair. The only reason I would say I would prefer Christian McCaffrey over Kamara is I think that McCaffrey's a little bit better of a runner from the backfield than Kamara is, but it's very negligible at this point when we're dealing with two of the best players in the league. Kamara is incredibly. He's the definition of electric when you look at a player that has his jolt and his speed and his ability to change the tide of a game with a single instant. I love Kamara. I think he's great for their city in New Orleans. I think that he's a shining spot on what I believe to be is a franchise that will be hitting some tough times here soon, especially with their cap situation and their dreadful quarterback situation. With Jameis Winston doing some of the strangest workouts I've ever seen publicized, and Taysom Hill being the single most overpaid player in the history of the NFL, regardless of whatever happens. I think Kamara is the shining spot there. Something happened to Michael Thomas this last year. He lost his edge. I'm not sure what happened. It could be the regression of Drew Brees. We'll have to see. But I think he's the ultimate Swiss Army knife for a team. I just think Christian McCaffrey is a little bit better a downhill runner that I would give.
Just unrelated, I think what happened to Michael Thomas was that he was injured for the majority of the season and getting suspended for fighting his teammate. But we're just speculating here. So, do you have anything else to say on Kamara? Or am I good to move on?
You are all good, brother. All good
right.
in the neighborhood.
So,
like it's Tuesday and it's fried chicken day.
Number 2, we're gonna go with Nick Chubb. He is probably he is if Derrick Henry didn't exist, he would be easily the best running back in the league. as a pure runner. He is just incredible. Whenever he gets the ball, he makes the right decision. He is such a strong running back. Like people just bounce off of him. He's a very quiet running back. He doesn't say a lot. He doesn't talk smack. He just runs. He's very productive, very good. And the fact that he's paired with Kareem Hunt, so he's able to get that rest. And Kareem Hunt's more of a pass catching running back, or at least they use him in that way. He's really talented at it too. The Browns have a crazy duo of running backs. Definitely the best duo of running backs and best running back group. Easily. But Nick Chubb is just a phenomenal runner, often overlooked. Now that the Browns are a little bit more, hot topicy, he gets a little bit more respect than he did a season or two ago. But overall, he's a phenomenal runner. I can't say enough positive things about Nick Chubb. So, with that being said, Christian, take it away.
Yeah, Nick Chubb's great. I don't really have any knocks to his game, his situation, and anything. Kareem Hunt helps him out a little bit, gives him that rest that he adequately needs. He's running behind one of the best O-lines in football, headlined by Wyatt Teller of Liberty High School in Virginia, which is really cool. But yeah, Nick Chubb is what you want in a bell cow and the person you want to hand the ball off to 40 times a game and get results from. I really like him, and I do appreciate the fact that you said that should Derrick Henry not exist, he'd be the best one on this list. I completely agree with that. That's why number 2 exists. And unfortunately, he'll have to be there for the next couple of years because the King 22, 2K King, GOAT, sitting at the top of the list.
I will. I'm actually quite excited to talk about this. So, yeah, I mean, he had a phenomenal season. And of course, being a Ravens fan, I wanted to find something to knock him, and I sat here and I was like, haha, I'll get him on the fact that if Nick Chubb didn't need to split carries, then he would have passed him, or if this would happen. But overall, like what he did is phenomenal, regardless of the teams he did it against. There was some there's some knocks, like he ran for like almost 500 yards against just the Houston Texans in his quest, but he also ran against 100 yards against the Green Bay Packers, and that was considered a bad game for him. After that game, people were talking like, did they figure him out? And it was a game in the snow, and he still ran for 98 yards. If most running backs ran for 98 yards, you'd be like, wow, that's a pretty good running back. He's doing pretty well. So he was held to like such a high standard. So overall, I think he's just the best running back in the league, and I'm sure Christian has a lot more to say on this. Hopefully, he doesn't take it too long, but I'm just kidding, I'm teasing. Overall, I think obviously the best running back doesn't have the best hands, but is a powerful runner if he gets to the second level. If he's blocked to the second level, it's game over. He's a slow starter for sure. He kind of like has to get that like wind up to go, but as soon as he's on his way, he's on his way. And even though it looks like he's running in sand, he's outrunning defensive backs. He's outrunning linebackers, which I guess is less impressive than defensive backs. But regardless of that, he's just outrunning everyone on his way to the end zone. And for someone who's built like a linebacker, it's very impressive to see what he does. So I'll let Christian have his time, and hopefully it's a good one. So
Yeah, do you like the picture I posted in the chat?
listen, Earl Thomas is not a Raven anymore, so I'm a-okay with
Earl, you see where he said he flipped Earl Thomas around and said, "Hey, I know you block for me, buddy."
All right. Don't make me bring up the 2.2 yards for carrying the playoffs.
He goes, good shit, Earl, and yeah, because you guys lost that game. You beat us last year. I don't care about that. This is just a beautiful photo. So Derrick, mother, and one of the greatest players in the league, could potentially be on his way to a Hall of Fame career should he keep up relatively similar production throughout the next few years, get a few more rushing titles, all that. And I feel like it's rare to see a player come into a Hall of Fame career in the running back position. I feel like the most recent one we have was Adrian Peterson, who that's through the last 10, 15 years that we've had him. And there hasn't been really anybody to rival that yet so far, in my opinion. I think nobody in the league, barring quarterbacks, has the ability to completely control the game like Derrick Henry does. I think people have this opinion of him that he's this big, bruising running back, and while he's monstrous of a human being, he's not that great of a power runner through the tackles, running over individuals. And that could be due to the fact that we had a lot of offensive line injuries past year on the Titans. But I do believe that if you give Derrick Henry enough space, which is not a lot of space, he has, uh, I believe, something along the lines of his yards after contact this season would have still been a top 3 rusher in the league. So even if you do get him in contact, there's a good chance you're not bringing him down. It would be disrespectful not to bring up the stiff arm, which is like Thor's hammer to him. Only he can do it the way he does it, and it is so powerful. He sent Josh Norman into the 3000s. So we'll find him when we're listening to the Jonas Brothers song. We went to the year 3000. And then we'll see Josh Norman, and he'll be like, "Hey, what happened, guys?" And we said you got stiff armed. Uh, I genuinely believe Derrick Henry is one of the best players in the league. It's really hard to talk about him without just ovulating. I think he is so great. If we could have a little bit more of offensive line help and no injuries, I think he could have beaten the 2K record this year. Ran for 2,027 yards. And then recently bought his offensive line some gold chains, and they're very cool. And it's really funny seeing all these large white men wearing completely dripped out chains when they're all country and they don't know they're wearing like a country hat and and a giant gold chain. Um, but I don't know what else to say about Derrick Henry other than the fact that I think he's the most destructive player in the league, and he fits rightly at number 1 on this list.
Yeah, I don't agree with everything you said, but you had a good time with that. You deserve this. Titans deserve some wins.
I'm gonna
So
write down what you
overall,
said.
on
You're
the
going in the
list,
quote book.
just overall, you believe Ezekiel Elliott should be a little higher. You also believe Austin Eckler should be a little higher. I think I agree with those. I don't think Zeke should be too much higher. I think Miles. I think the young group and Miles Sanders I think is his second year. So Miles, I think he came out in 2019. So Miles Sanders, Jonathan Taylor, J.K. Dobbins. I think those are 3 to watch. I think that James Robinson is the best of the rookie class. But in terms of young running backs, those 3 and Josh Jacobs because he is I think he came in 2018 too. So he's not a seasoned vet in the league. But I think these are all the ones to really watch for. So this is my running back list. I want to thank everyone for listening, and if you want to take away some outro here, Christian, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, I would like to thank you guys for listening. I'd like you to respect that these are our opinions and they are not fact, except for the things I say, which are fact. And that I hope you had a good time. If you guys want to subscribe down below so you can keep up with what we're doing, we're also going to include our Twitter, which is at OurSportsPod. If you want to give us a follow there, and we'll try to be more active on that. We'll get all this rolling. And you want to leave a like, comment any questions you have, anything you want to talk about in the comments. We'll get conversing. I know that I'm a man of the hot take and the weird take as well. So if you guys have any feedback, let us know, and we really appreciate you guys listening. Have a good day. Craig! Go away, Craig!